Hi everyone, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I read in February, maybe a little bit of March, but I think mostly February. So let's get into these books I've read not so recently. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. Of course, y'all should all be familiar with this book. This is the prequel to The Hate U Give. In this book, we follow Star's father, Maverick. In it, we follow him as a teenager as he is dealing with essentially 2 unexpected pregnancies and with fatherhood and all of that. So I rated this book 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I was not expecting any different. I have loved every single Angie Thomas book. I think she always brings something incredible to each of her novels, and she's just a fantastic writer. So in this one, I really enjoyed that we got to read from the perspective of a teenage father, because I feel like even though we don't even get that many stories from teenage mothers, it always does tend to lean towards teenage mothers. So seeing the perspective of a teenage boy who is tasked with raising children, I thought that was so important and such a valuable perspective to have. I also loved that this essentially tackled how difficult and challenging it is to resist the call of drug dealing when you know how much it could help your family, when you know how it could support your new child, your baby, and how it could just give you so much comfort to have the money necessary to properly take care of your child. So I appreciated that. I also appreciated that this explored Maverick's grief. He experiences a loss, and he is very much trying to grapple with his sense of vulnerability, about feeling more open and willing to show his sadness and his emotions. Again, just brilliant. I also loved that his mother was bisexual, so that was something I was completely not expecting, because I don't remember that being referenced at all in The Hate U Give, but it might have been, but I just don't remember. So I love that we had that, and I love that we had interactions with his mom and her partner. It was just fantastic. So yeah, I don't think I have much else to say about this, especially since I'm trying to be quicker in this video since I'm behind on recent reads. So yeah, highly recommend picking up this book. The next book I'm going to be talking about is This Accident of Being Lost by Leanne Sesamososke Simpson. I really tried to say her name correctly, but I'm not entirely sure. So this is a collection of songs and stories that I actually read twice. This book was so good that I just had to read it 2 times. The first time was just to take it in general, to have a general broad strokes idea of the book. But then I was like, I need to take this in again so that I can fully understand as much as possible of this collection. And it was so worth it. I picked it up as an audiobook, and the author narrates it, and she's a fantastic narrator. So I would highly recommend it in the audiobook route, although I actually really want to get a physical copy because I have no idea if she made choices in the physical layout of it that would make the songs and stories even more impactful. So I really do want to pick up my own copy of this. Essentially, one of the things that I really liked about this collection is that it had a narrator or speaker that had anxiety and attachment issues, and that was incredibly, I could understand that perspective so well. Even though I'm not exactly like that, it still felt very relatable, and I was just always very invested when we were following this type of character. It was unclear to me if the stories in here were completely unrelated or if they followed somewhat similar characters or not. So that's why I go with the more ambiguous term of speaker. Another central topic of this collection is whiteness. Since the author is indigenous, she really goes into performative activism, into the ways in which white bodies are prioritized, and in which how white people like to pretend like they're helping indigenous communities, but they want to do it in the most passive and easy way imaginable. So all of that here was phenomenal. Really, really, really appreciated that being one of the major themes. That's just like scratching the surface of this collection. Honestly, I wish I were more eloquent to talk about it. I just really, really, really loved it. I thought it was so good. The next book I'm going to be talking about is The Vanishing by Karla Nicole. This is the sequel to Lore and Lust. In the first book, we follow two vampires. One of them is Haru, who is a reclusive vampire of very, very old blood, who is very coveted by the rest of the vampire community because essentially if they get to be his mates, they get a lot of status in the vampire community. And in this world, the vampires live out in the open. There's no hiding who they are, what they are, or any of that. And then we also follow Nino, who has recently started his own business, his own bar, and for reasons I can no longer remember, their paths entwine, and so it's the romance that develops between the two of them. As a reminder, I really enjoyed book one. It was a lot of fun, but this sequel I rated 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite. Even though I still had fun with it, I still overall enjoyed it. It just wasn't as strong for me as the first book. I'm pretty confident book 2 is longer than book 1, and I feel like that highlighted some of the issues I already had with the writing in book 1. Part of it is that I think the writing is far too formal, though I understand that that is probably intentional, and it's probably because we are following two characters who are considerably old vampires. It still felt jarring. For the most part, their dialogue was witty and fun and engaging, but then the descriptions felt very stiff and distant, and it just didn't match. It just didn't align. The vibes didn't align, and so because the story was longer, that just bothered me more. The other major issue I had with the story was the pacing. The pacing just felt inconsistent. Sometimes it dragged and sometimes it sped by too quickly. And so one of the major plot points here, which, spoiler alert, like skip ahead, I will put like a big spoiler above and then remove it when I'm done. So one of the major things here that happens is something that I had already predicted happening. Since this book is called The Vanishing, I assumed Nino would be vanished and he would disappear. But I feel like the author did not fully take advantage of this situation. It felt like Nino was rescued by Haru way too easily. It felt like the villain was dealt with way too easily. And so it felt very unsatisfying. I felt like there was a lot of potential for emotional tension that just went entirely to waste. And so I was kind of left disappointed by that. And that was one of the major things that made the pacing of this book feel strange and like it didn't quite fit together properly. Okay, spoilers over. The other kind of issue I had with the pacing impacted Giovanni and Selena's relationship. Even though I really enjoyed their dynamic, I thought they were cute, I liked the inclusion of their romance here, I felt like it just was not enough. The way their relationship was built left me wanting more. And in addition, Giovanni's just the type of character that I'm like, I can enjoy you in fiction, but if you were before me right now, I'd punch you in the face because I'd hate you. So there was that strangeness of just me having mixed feelings about Giovanni, and then just finding their relationship cute overall, but feeling like it just needed more build up. Still, the major thing I like about this book is the characters. I still do think our main characters are fantastic. I really liked that in this book We got to see both Haru and Nino grow. Nino with more independence, with being seen as someone more capable of taking care of himself, and Haru with being more emotionally available, more prepared to share his wants, his needs, and all of that. So overall, I still really love Nino, and I still really love Haru, and I'm very happy that I got to read this book and that the author offered it to her newsletter subscribers to read early. I still really appreciated that. It was still a lot of fun. So I will definitely be finishing this series. Like, no way in hell am I not going to be completing this series. But I just had a few issues with it. Also, I almost forgot to mention that there were some cute ass scenes here with Haru and children that were just precious. And I desperately need book 3 to feature them deciding to have children and have scenes with Haru and his children, because that is a need. That is not a want, that is a need. So all I can do is cross my fingers and hope that Carla Nicole will deliver the goods. Please, I'm begging you. The last book I'm going to be talking about is Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. If I'm not talking about Talia Hibbert in a video, I'm thinking about Talia Hibbert in a video. So this is the last book in the Brown Sisters trilogy. It's a romance series. We follow the last and youngest of the Brown sisters. In this one, we have a sunshine and grumpy romance. So it's a little bit a kind of a hate to love romance. And it's essentially about Eve, who has never really taken responsibility in her life, has never really committed to a job. She's terrified of commitment. And so her parents decide to cut her off from essentially her inheritance, her money, her whatever it is. I'm not someone with that kind of thing, so I can't remember the name for it. But she decides to go to the countryside, and she ends up finding this bed and breakfast who has an opening for a cook in the kitchen, and she decides to, on a whim, apply. And at first, she's not going to be hired, but when she accidentally runs over the owner, she kind of has no other option because he is now impaired and cannot take care of his own bed and breakfast. So she takes responsibility, and of course, it's the romance between the man she ran over and her. So I rated this 5 stars. Of course, how could I not? Talia Hibbert is my everything. I had so much fun with this book, but I was terrible at keeping notes while I was reading. I was really bad at it. Talia Hibbert makes me have so much fun that sometimes literally that's all I'm capable of saying. I'm just like, I love this. I'm having so much fun. This is such a great time. And it's like, that's not a review, that's just vibes. But it is the reality. So in this one, as always, I loved our protagonist. I love, as always, that Talia Hibbert chooses very individual struggles for her protagonists. So like I mentioned earlier, Eve has commitment issues that she's trying to work through. She's trying both to figure out how to not be afraid of following her dreams or following something she's passionate about. And then our protagonist is trying to be more emotionally available, I think is what I would term it. But he had a turbulent childhood because he's autistic, but his parents didn't have him diagnosed. They just thought he was not made right. So he ended up being raised by his aunt, who of course eventually had him diagnosed and all of that. And so he has never really found a relationship that works out, that he hasn't found a partner that understands how he loves and how he shows his love. And so of course it works out with Eve because this is a romance. What else are you expecting? And also Eve is autistic as well. I can't remember if she gets a formal diagnosis, but at least she suspects that she is autistic. So I loved that we had two autistic main characters together. That was wonderful and lovely. The smut in here as well was fantastic. It was some quality shit. I wouldn't have minded having more because it was so good that I was like, man, such a shame that there's not more. So really enjoyed this. Highly recommend it. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you would like to follow me on any of my social media, I will have the links to that down below in the description. But for now, see you next time.